Raider Nation, good morning. It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, with some major Raiders news that we need to discuss. According to Adam Schefter, Antonio Pierce is the favorite right now to be the Las Vegas Raiders head coach. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And the more and more that there is smoke starting to develop, I am really starting to think that AP is going to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, coming up here on today's show, I'm going to go through and I'm going to read everything that Adam Schefter put out in a report today. We're going to talk about Antonio Pierce. We're going to talk about what Maxx Crosby did yesterday, but not only what he did on social media, what he is telling people inside of that Raiders locker room. And then we're going to discuss the GM interviews that ended up happening yesterday, the GM interview that is happening today, and a text that I got late last night, which is then more smoke leading towards Antonio Pierce being that guy. So here's what the report is out from ESPN. It just got released today. Interim Antonio Pierce has emerged as the leading candidate to become the full-time head coach for the Raiders, with support of key players in the Las Vegas Raiders locker room, which, if you guys remember, Maxx Crosby said he wanted Antonio Pierce. Davante Adams said that he wanted Antonio Pierce. And the Raiders have not done any other head coaching interviews. They have interest in Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh, and they have interest in Tennessee Titans, I guess, old head coach Mike Vrabel. But if you remember, Pierce, he is interviewing with the Titans today. And I know a lot of people were asking me, Mitch, well, why didn't the Raiders decline Pierce's interview with the Titans? Because they declined one for the Patrick Graham. It's very important. In the NFL, you're allowed to decline interviews if it is considered a lateral move. So Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator, moving to interview for a defensive coordinator job, Raiders are allowed to decline that. DC type of shit, right? And then if you look at Antonio Pierce, interim, has the opportunity to get a head coach. That is looked at as not a lateral move. That is you actually getting a head coaching job. So the Raiders, they weren't allowed to decline that. But the big report here is this. Antonio Pierce is the favorite to be the Las Vegas Raiders head coach. If you wanted AP to be the head coach, man, hit that subscribe button. I know that I'm not here in the studio. I just got a text that woke me up this morning and said, hey, man, y'all got to get this thing going. I really think it's going to end up being AP. And in fact, one of the things that, I'm super excited, as you guys can tell. One of the things that Adam Schefter ended up saying was, I would be shocked, right? And this is a source that was talking to him saying, I would be shocked if Antonio Pierce is not the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. And again, I put out a lot of stories here on this show, but when people like Schefter say things like this on Twitter, people really need to start to listen. People need to really start to follow him. He's obviously very, very well connected, okay? So then, as this whole thing continues to go on here with Maxx Crosby, Davante Adams, all that kind of good stuff, I'll get into what the Condor did, right? Because what Maxx Crosby did, I think it's why he's the face of the franchise. It's when a player like Max does what he does, people really need to be able to respect 98. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what Maxx Crosby did in just a second, but I do want to know, do you want Antonio Pierce to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders? If you're like, Mitch, I'm in. I want AP to be the head coach of the Silver and Black. I want you to spam AP down below. You're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. What I want you to do is scroll on down. Let me know what you're thinking. And if you want AP to be the head coach, spam AP. If you don't, well, then after that ad break, you better give me a name of a head coach that you want instead. The way that I have always put this is this. I want Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham together. I believe that those two people have done a phenomenal job with the defensive side of the football, and that is where I personally want to go. If Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham were unable to be retained, then I would look at the idea of Jim Harbaugh. If you can only get Antonio Pierce, I do think in that scenario, Jim might have been the better answer. However, though, right, with what happened today, and this is the way that, a lot of this stuff can happen, it can go either way. What happened today with Maxx Crosby, I am telling you all right now, the only option that the Raiders have at head coach is Antonio Pierce. It's not Jim Harbaugh anymore, because what Maxx Crosby said yesterday, what Maxx Crosby did, there's no other option. It's not Jim Harbaugh. It's not Mike Vrabel. It's not Bill Belichick. It is Antonio Pierce. It is the only option Mark Davis can go with. So, Mark, are you listening? Because if you let Maxx Crosby leave, Raider Nation is going to be unbelievably mad at you. And if you're like, Mitch, what the hell are you talking about? Well, for those of you that don't follow him on social media, yesterday, Maxx Crosby tweeted out, #HireAP. About 2 months ago on the Raiders Report, I discussed how Antonio Pierce, Maxx Crosby, Mark Davis, 2 months ago got together. They sat down at a dinner when it was one of the things that, after they announced him to be the interim, there was a lot of discussion of, hey, like this team's, what the direction of the Las Vegas Raiders was trying to go into. And according to Adam Schefter, and according to my sources as well, again, smoke, fire, Maxx Crosby said to Mark Davis that if you do not hire Antonio Pierce to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, I will explore trade options. Mic drop. I mean, that's what that is. If Maxx Crosby walks into your room, and if you think Max is the only guy that thinks like that, because I guarantee you this, if Maxx Crosby looks at Antonio Pierce or looks at Mark Davis and says, hey, man, if you don't bring in AP, I'm going to look to get traded from the Las Vegas Raiders, and then Mark Davis goes and hires somebody else, see you later, Maxx Crosby. I'll see you later, right? Because he's not going to deal with the bullshit. I mean, think about how bad that Raiders defense has been, and now finally they're able to figure it out. You got your second team All-Pro, which, let's just be real here, Spam 98 down below. He should have been first team All-Pro. You have him come up to you and say, hey, man, I want this guy to be head coach. You know who's next? Davante Adams. Davante Adams is going to say, all right, bet, I'm out the door. And then no player is ever going to want to play for the Raiders, because if you're willing to let Maxx Crosby walk out the door, what player is ever going to want to play for the Las Vegas Raiders? Now, I get it. There are a lot of fans out there that wanted Jim Harbaugh. There's a lot of fans out there that maybe wanted the Raiders to go in a different direction. But for Maxx Crosby to look at Mark Davis and say, if you don't hire Antonio Pierce, I'm going to look at trade options. I get it. There's a lot of people that said they wanted Jim Harbaugh. But here's the thing. Now, you got to be like, okay, I'm not losing Maxx Crosby. I'm not losing Maxx Crosby. He is the most important player on this team. He is the heart and soul. He is everything. I know AP said that's Josh Jacobs. It's Maxx Crosby. That's the heart and soul of your team. All right, y'all. Obviously, I am super, super fired up here. We got a lot of stuff to discuss. The next thing that's going to be coming up here on today's show is going to be around GM candidates, right? So yesterday, Terrence Gray, Director of Personnel, the Buffalo Bills, he ended up meeting with the Raiders. Heard that went okay. I actually have a source that I went to high school with. He's on the Bills coaching staff and front office, and he always tells me, Terrence is a great, solid dude. However, though, this is the one that's really grabbing my attention. So late last night, again, if you don't follow me on social media, I'm at Mitchell Renz 365. But late last night on social, I get a text, right? And it said, hey, I just want you to know, if Ed Dodds is hired to be the Raiders general manager, it's not a guarantee, I believe was the exact word. It's not a guarantee that it's going to be Jim Harbaugh, because a lot of the expectation was if you bring in Ed Dodds, then the next area that the Raiders are going to go in the head coaching circle is going to be Antonio Pierce. I'm telling you all right now that that's not the case. It could be Ed Dodds and Antonio Pierce, which if you followed my video that I put out earlier, it's no disrespect to Champ Kelly, I think Ed Dodds is a better general manager, right? Like if you were to put up Ed Dodds next to Champ Kelly, I think Ed Dodds is better. So if you bring in a guy like Ed Dodds, you can keep Antonio Pierce as your head coach, because from what I understand, Dodds had a really good interview, and one of his main selling points was, if you want to win, I'm your guy. I don't care if it's Mitchell Renz at head coach. I don't care if it's Jeremy Chuggs at head coach. If I'm the general manager, we're going to win football games. So now Mark Davis, knowing that, thinking that, he's got a phenomenal relationship with Mark. Dodds started with the Raiders back in 2003, and if you don't watch Graff's show, Graff was talking about with Stu how Dodds texted Stu and Graff and said, I want to finish where I started. And when I hear a general manager say, I want to finish where I started, I'm not even kidding you right now. I don't know if you guys can see it. I got goosebumps. I want the Raiders to win. I don't care who the GM is. I don't care. Well, now I care who the head coach is. I ain't losing Max. But my point is this. I want commitment to excellence. I want just win, baby. And for players like Maxx Crosby and Davante Adams to step up and say that they want AP. For Maxx Crosby to tell you, and you know what the Raiders mean to Crosby. It's tatted on his freaking body. That dude is silver and black through and through. I don't want to hear anybody down in the comments being like, wow, Max would really leave if they don't keep AP. Trade him anyway. If that's your mindset, get out of here, you lollipop. I'm not dealing with that type of shit. Maxx Crosby deserves the right to be able to say what he wants, especially dealing with all the BS that he has had to deal with since 2019 and being the player and being the leader that he is. So Ed Dodds now, he could be the GM. You bring in Antonio Pierce. I mean, I'll tell you this right now. If it's Ed Dodds at GM, Antonio Pierce at head coach, Patrick Graham as DC, Champ Kelly, great dude. If he ends up going somewhere else, yeah, I'll miss Champ. But you know what I'll also like? Those 2 third-round comp picks that you're going to get. Because remember, if Champ Kelly leaves, you get 2 third-round comp picks. That sounds pretty damn good to me. I don't know about you. But then also another guy that I would really like the Raiders to bring in some other type of role is Trey Brown. If the Raiders were able to figure out a way to do some combination of Champ Kelly, Trey Brown, Ed Dodds, Trey Brown, Antonio Pierce, the head coach. You keep Patrick Graham at defensive coordinator, and then who knows where they decide to go at OC. Maybe you bring in a guy like Clint Kubiak was one of the names that I really, really wanted. So bottom line is this. There's a lot of takeaways, a lot of things to update. I will be live later on today on the Raiders Report. We're going to go live for Chiefs Dolphins today because FKC, am I right? And I'll probably be live unless this news becomes 100% official, according to Adam Schefter. But I'll be live today at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, which we'll be able to update some more stuff. So please tune in to our live show. We're going to have a lot of fun rooting for the Dolphins to try to get the Chiefs out of the playoff race. But here are the big stories that y'all need to know. First is Adam Schefter is reporting that Antonio Pierce is the favorite to be the head coach. And according to a source close to Schefter, I would be shocked if it's not Antonio Pierce. Then you look at the Las Vegas odds. Yesterday, it was minus 200 for AP, plus 175 for Harbaugh. Now I'm looking at a source. It's plus 400 for Antonio Pierce. So not only is Schefter saying it, now the betting odds are going in the favor of AP. A lot of smoke, about to be fire. Maxx Crosby says that he would demand a trade if Antonio Pierce is not named the head coach. And then on top of that, you got Ed Dodds, who had a great interview yesterday. A source texted me and said, if Dodds is hired at GM, that does not mean it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. So what it sounds like is this. Antonio Pierce is going to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. And when AP becomes the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, I hope y'all are ready to turn up. I hope y'all are ready to turn up. Shit, you know what? I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to be live on the Raiders Report for 11 and a half hours because last time when I went live for 26, YouTube can only save 12-hour increments. Maybe we try to go live for it's like New Year's ball drop type of stuff. If AP gets hired to be the head coach of the Raiders, I hope y'all are ready to turn up. I hope y'all are ready to have a time. I don't care what day of the week it is. I don't care what time of the night it is. I got that commitment to excellence. If only I could light up a cigar in the office. We'll see. All right, y'all. I want you to enjoy the rest of your day. A lot of good stuff here around Antonio Pierce. Shout out to Maxx Crosby for being an absolute legend. Shout out to Maxx Crosby, Ed Dodds. I'm hyped. It is bright and early in the morning, man. It's on a Saturday. It's a good day to be a Raider. It's a damn good day to be a Raiders. If you want more videos like you just saw, click that subscribe button right here. And then if you want even more videos from the Las Vegas Raiders Report, the #1 Raiders show in the world, I want you to click this button right up here to get even more content. And then to get even more videos from Jeremy, Chugs, and I right here. These personally, though, are Chuck's favorite. These are Chugs and I's favorite. Hit that subscribe button right now.